Yesterday, the House of Representatives voted to approve a bill that would defund Planned Parenthood and repeal certain measures of the Obamacare legislation. President Obama has vowed to veto it, so the House already has scheduled a veto override vote for later this month. However, it is unlikely the Senate has enough votes to override the veto. It is good news to people who understand that Planned Parenthood is the largest abortion business in the U.S. and the world. But what is the end game? Will this end abortion? Will America return to a high view of individual human dignity again? Much has changed in the U.S. In fact, 2015 alone may prove to be one of the most pivotal moments in U.S. history, perhaps second only to the Constitutional Convention and adoption of the Bill of Rights from 1787 to 1789. It may be that the political tapestry woven in those early years was fated to a short-lived existence, having been unraveled by events of late. A seismic shift in the way American polity is perceived and exercised has caused a civil earthquake, demoralizing and dehumanizing the population, not so subtly, the aftershocks of which will continue to level the civil order for generations to come. One piece of legislation and 3 Supreme Court cases did most of the tectonic work: Obamacare, the 2 Obamacare court challenges, and 1 same-sex marriage ruling. Let me explain. Obamacare is just about healthcare. It's not just about healthcare, as some people think it is. Like Obergefell is not only about same-sex marriage. To think that Obamacare is limited to healthcare would be short-sighted. The acceptance of Obamacare signaled a revolution in the philosophy of American government by the people, for the people, to government over the people. Not a revolutionary concept, just the one the Founding Fathers revolted against. The constitutionality of the legislation was tested by the Supreme Court and ruled legitimate twice. Then, again, in June of this past year, Obergefell versus Hodges happened to us, which ostensibly was about granting marriage licenses to same-sex couples. In order to do that, the Supreme Court needed to implicitly change the traditional definition of liberty from protected by the government to bestowed by the government, a critical distinction. Whatever your opinions are about health care or same-sex unions, it bears noting that this narrow view of liberty, presumed by recent decisions, is a watershed deluge so significant that it will likely change the topography of the Western social map. Obamacare, aka Patient Protection and Affordability Care Act, was signed into law in 2010. It is legislation unprecedented in scope, not just because it took control of 1/6 of the U.S. gross domestic product, but because it swept over the rights of the individual citizen. The first Supreme Court ruling on Obamacare, June 28, 2012, dealt with this individual mandate. The ruling held that it is within the right of government to force citizens to purchase health insurance. This was a new governing precedent, that the government's rights take priority over the individual's, changing the role of the individual from an equal citizen to a ruled subject. This American philosophical heresy was reaffirmed in the Supreme Court's June 25, 2015 decision, where it upheld the law once again, not by its merits or wording, but by its intended spirit. This means that the American public can no longer rely on the court to interpret laws on face value. Further, it means that America's philosophy of government by the people and for the people, enforced by the rule of law, was undercut by rule of man. In this case, the rule of 9 men. To add insult to Obamacare injury, the Supreme Court solidified this new American revolution with the June 26, 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges ruling. If Obamacare introduced the patently un-American notion that government has rights over the people, then same-sex marriage solidified it by demonstrating that government is the manufacturer and distributor of any rights the people may have. In order for the Supreme Court to create a right to same-sex marriage, it had to expand, redefine, the traditional definition of liberty. America's legal heritage defines personal liberty as largely negative, meaning liberty is freedom from government. For Obergefell to stand now means liberty is defined as positive. What this means is that the benefits are provided by government. If 9 unelected justices can redefine liberty in order to fabricate rights, there is no limit to its power over the people. To put it more clearly, if judges can create and confer rights, then those upon which they are conferred are not actually free self-governing people, but subjects of the state instead. The word freedom then becomes a vacuous word the ruling elite uses to lull the public into compliance. If the people of the United States, represented in the legislature, allow this ruling to stand, then the rule of law remains supplanted by rule of man. As Chief Justice Roberts noted in the Obergefell dissent, if an unvarying social institution enduring over all recorded history cannot inhibit judicial policymaking, what can? But this approach is dangerous for the rule of law. Now embedded in the DNA of U.S. polity are two conflicting notions of human right, those given by government versus those given by nature's God. If government now has the power to create and give rights to people, then they also have the power to limit, infringe, or eliminate other rights, including the supposed inalienable ones categorized under life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Things like freedom of speech, religion, security of person, etc. Yesterday, January 6, 2016, the House of Representatives voted to pass the Senate's version of a bill that would repeal some core tenets of Obamacare, while at the same time defund Planned Parenthood for 1 year. How will this measure serve to reverse the American political revolution that has occurred over the last 11 months? The legislature is doing nothing about having been fully vested by the Supreme Court as masters metering out rights to the masses, previously respected as private citizens. Let's say the legislature, just for sake of argument, and the president execute a full repeal of Obamacare in 2017, setting the clock of governing philosophy back to individual rights are equal to or greater than the government's. We still have to deal with the Obergefell question of who gives individuals their rights. If Obergefell stands and rights are given by government, it doesn't matter if Obamacare is fully repealed, since government now stands over the people, instead of a tool in the hands of the people. In which case, real individual rights are a fiction. All the Republicans would have done is make a clean, orderly place for a legion of demonic legislative acts to move in. No, to solve America's crisis, we must look through the fog of the financial and medical train wreck of Obamacare to who is the author of human rights. If it is God, then the legislature will overturn Obergefell, and Americans, including the preborn ones, will be free again. If it is government, then Obergefell will stand as the silent sentinel of slavery. And government will clap more chains of contradictory rights and compulsory Obamacare-like programs upon this once free people, until we are all bound to unnatural duties of ensuring that those new rights are not infringed by the expression of our outdated God-given ones, like religion and speech. As Justice Thomas noted in his Obergefell dissent, the majority goes to great lengths to assert that its decision will advance the dignity of same-sex couples. Yet the government cannot bestow dignity and cannot take it away. He concludes his dissent with an ominous warning. The court's decision will have inestimable consequences for our Constitution and our society. Assuming nothing changes, America may very well look back on 2015 as the sunset of a great idea. Government as a tool of the citizens to protect their God-given liberty, not a master of it. What does 2016 and beyond hold for people of faith and traditional Christian values now that Uncle Sam seems to have rendered unto himself all power over the populace? Dissenting Supreme Court Justice Alito confirms Justice Thomas's dystopian concern, foreseeing that Obergefell will be used to vilify Americans who are unwilling to assent to the new orthodoxy. The implications of this will be exploited by those who are determined to stamp out every vestige of dissent. I assume that those who cling to old beliefs will be able to whisper their thoughts in the recesses of their homes. But if they repeat those views in public, they will risk being labeled as bigots and treated as such by governments, employers, and schools. He's right. I've already experienced the name-calling and the bully tactics. This new American philosophy is a type of fundamentalism unable to tolerate religious beliefs and behaviors that are contrary to the officially approved secular agenda. Will this government do what most governments in the history of mankind have been unwilling or unable to do? Give power back to the people. To do so requires a return to belief in human dignity derived from God. It will result not only in a full repeal of Obamacare, but also an overturning of both Obergefell and Roe v. Wade. Will America's legislature and next presidential administration have the courage to face America's real demons without succumbing to the siren delusions of absolute power? If not, then the once blazing sun of Western civilization, the world's champion of art, literature, medicine, education, and industry, fueled by family and informed by the church, will quickly fade in the dusky years of a morally decrepit country. I'm Jim Harden. Thank you for listening. God bless.